Good morning, friends. I am Captain Dr. D.K. Ramawat, working as a non-invasive cardiologist at Ramawat Heart and General Medicine Hospital, Bardmer, Rajasthan, India. Today, we are going to take part second of atrial fibrillation in India and its management and complications. Last time we have taken part 1 of atrial fibrillation in India and its complications and the management. So I am sure that you will like the part 2. So let us start. In part 1 actually we have discussed number 1 introduction, then incidence and prevalence, then comorbidities in atrial fibrillation, and then we are running in the management of atrial fibrillation in India. And in management we were running in antithrombotics, and today also still we are continuing the antithrombotics. We are continuing the antithrombotics in the management part. So here we are running in atrial fibrillation among Indian patient and its pathogenesis and management. So in antithrombotics we are running combination therapy with oral anticoagulant and antiplatelet. What are the recommendations? After elective coronary stenting for stable coronary artery disease in atrial fibrillation patients at risk of stroke, combination triple therapy with aspirin number 1, clopidogrel number 2 and oral anticoagulant number 3 should be considered for 1 month to prevent recurrent coronary and cerebral ischemic events. This is class 2 recommendation. Then after an acute coronary syndrome with stent implantation in atrial fibrillation patient at risk of stroke, combination of triple therapy with aspirin, clopidogrel and an oral anticoagulant should be considered for 1 to 6 months to prevent recurrent coronary and cerebral ischemic events. This is also class 2A recommendation. After an acute coronary syndrome without stent implantation in atrial fibrillation patient at risk of stroke, dual treatment with an oral anticoagulant and aspirin or clopidogrel. Dual means here what? An oral anticoagulant and aspirin or clopidogrel should be considered for up to 12 months to prevent recurrent coronary and cerebral ischemic events. This is also class 2A recommendation. The duration of combination antithrombotic therapy, especially triple therapy, should be kept for a limited period, balancing the estimated risk of recurrent coronary events and the bleeding. This is also 2A recommendations. Now the dual therapy with any oral anticoagulant plus clopidogrel 75 mg per day may be considered as an alternative to initial triple therapy in selected patients. So now I am take you at antithrombotic therapy after an acute coronary syndrome in atrial fibrillation patient requiring anticoagulation. Remember, it is after an acute coronary syndrome requiring anticoagulation in atrial fibrillation patients. Atrial fibrillation patient in need of oral anticoagulant after acute coronary syndrome. Here you have to remember your has blood stem mnemonic, because here you will found out the risk of the bleeding. If bleeding risk is high, according to Hess blood scoring system, compared to risk of acute coronary syndrome or stent thrombosis, then what to do? So now I am again revising. In part first, we have taken this Hess blood scheme. Here we are revising. H stands for hypertension, A for abdominal, renal or liver function, and S stands for stroke, B stands for bleeding, L stands for labile INR, and E stands for elderly, and D stands for either drugs or alcohol. Now what is labile INR? Unstable or high INR or poor time in therapeutic range, that is less than 60%. Normally it should be more than 65 to 70%, but if it is less than 60%, this is labile INR. Now Hess blood score, if equal to 3 or more than 3 is indicative of high risk of bleeding. So, and also you should remember the thing here. What is the triple therapy means? What? It should be given for 1 month, reasonable to administer, suggested by limited number of study, and if given for 6 months, reasonable to administer, suggested by single study, and dual therapy for 12 months, reasonable to administer, suggested by single study, and for 12 months may be considered to administer as an alternative to triple therapy, suggested by single study, and monotherapy lifelong. Given treatment is beneficial, useful and effective, suggested by limited numbers of the studies. So, if bleeding risk is high, according to Hess blood scoring system, compared to risk for acute coronary syndrome or stent thrombosis, then you must go for triple therapy, either for 1 month or for the 6 months, according to the situation. So triple therapy means, number 1, warfarin 5 to 10 mg per day based on PT-INR test. This is your warfarin. Second drug, aspirin 75 to 100 mg per day. The third drug, clopidogrel 75 mg daily. So this is your triple therapy. You can give either for 1 month or for 6 months, and this triple therapy is given to prevent recurrent coronary and cerebral ischemic events. Then we come to dual therapy. In this case, you will apply warfarin 5 to 10 mg per day based on PT-INR test, as well as aspirin 75 to 100 mg per day. This will be the dual therapy, and it is given for 12 months. It is given for 12 months after 3 or 6 months. Then after 12 months, you will apply monotherapy, that is oral anticoagulant, means only warfarin 5 to 10 mg per day based on PT-INR test. Now I am going to take you the therapy after elective percutaneous intervention in atrial fibrillation patient requiring anticoagulation. Atrial fibrillation patient in need of oral anticoagulant after elective PCI with stenting. Here again you have to find out bleeding risk is high according to Hess blood scoring system when compared to risk of acute coronary syndrome or stent thrombosis. Then only you go for anticoagulation therapy, and that too triple therapy, either for 1 month or 6 months to prevent recurrent coronary and cerebral ischemic events. Then after therapy or after 6 months, you can start dual therapy. Triple therapy was what? Oral anticoagulant with aspirin with clopidogrel. The dosage for warfarin is 5 to 10 mg per day based on the PT-INR test, and for aspirin dosage 75 to 100 mg per day, for clopidogrel 75 mg per day. Now in drug therapy, which is given up to 12 months, we have to apply warfarin 5 to 10 mg per day based on PT-INR test and combined with aspirin 75 to 100 mg per day. This is given up to 12 months. After 6 months, then the therapy after 12 months, which is the monotherapy, which is given lifelong. Here you have to use oral anticoagulant monotherapy, means you will continue only warfarin 5 to 10 mg per day based on PT-INR test. And now we are going where? We are going the dosing recommendation for non-vitamin K oral antagonist in atrial fibrillation. What are those non-vitamin K oral anticoagulants in atrial fibrillation? Dabigatran number 1, rivaroxaban number 2, apixaban number 3, and edoxaban number 4. Now, before we study the recommendation of the dosing, we should know what is P-glycoprotein inhibitors. Number 1, amiodarone, atorvastatin, azithromycin, the boceprevir, bromocriptine, captopril, carvedilol, and clarithromycin. These are the P-glycoprotein inhibitors. Then we are supposed to know CYP3A4, which are strong inhibitors of CYP3A4, and which include what? Clarithromycin, erythromycin, nepazodone, itraconazole, ketoconazole, etazanavir, darunavir, idinavir, lopinavir, neprinavir, ritonavir, and sequinavir, and tiprenavir. It is important to note that not all drugs within a class of medications are known to be inhibitors of CYP3A4. Then you must know the coagulopathy, called bleeding disorder, is a disorder in which the body's ability to coagulate, form clot, is impaired. This condition can cause a tendency toward prolonged or excessive bleeding, that is bleeding diathesis, which may occur spontaneously or following an injury or during medical and dental procedures. Now, also in the last, you must know hepatic impairment. Hepatic impairment, where there is a table which shows you the classification of hepatic impairment. This classification is called Child-Pugh classification. Child-Pugh classification. Here it is divided into class A, B and C. In class A, score is given 5 to 6. In class B, score are given 7 to 9, and score C, the scores are given 10 to 15 points. So, supposing the liver is impaired and he develops encephalopathy, or he is not having encephalopathy, give 1 number. If there is mild to moderate encephalopathy, means grade 1 to 2, then you give this number 2 number. And if encephalopathy is severe, means grade 3 or 4, give number 3. Then ascites, you must find out whether it is present or not. If there is no ascites, give number 1. If mild to moderate ascites and it is responsive to diuretics, give number 2. And if ascites is severe, diuretic refractory, then give number 3. Then you have to find out in hepatic impairment bilirubin. Less than 2, give 1 number. 2 to 3 bilirubin, give 2 number. More than 3 bilirubin, give 3 number. Then you have to find out albumin. If more than 3.5, give 1 number. If 2.8 to 3.5, give 2 numbers. If less than 2 to 2.8, give 3 numbers. Lastly, the per-thrombin time, if seconds prolong, this seconds prolong more than the normal, is more than 4, then give 1 number. If it exceeds 4.6 seconds, give 0.2. If exceeds more than 6 seconds, give 3 points. Then international normalization ratio, INR, if it is less than 1.7, give 1 number. If it is 1.7 to 2.3, give 2 score. If it is more than 2.3, give 3 score. So, this was the classification, child book classification for impairment of the liver. So, we are continuing, now we are coming to dosing. Now, dosing recommendation for dabigatran, 150 mg twice a daily with or without food. But if renal impairment is there, dose adjustment in renal dysfunction. If creatinine clearance is 15 to 30 ml per minute, consider 75 mg twice daily. If creatinine clearance is 30 to 50 ml per minute, then or simultaneously, if he is using concomitant P-glycoprotein inhibitor, then consider dose 75 mg twice daily. And if creatinine clearance is 30 to 49 ml per minute with high risk of bleeding, again I repeat, with high risk of bleeding, then consider 110 mg twice daily. Now the dose adjustment in hepatic impairment. In patient with moderate hepatic impairment means child book class B. Child book class B means scoring 7 to 9 points, means moderate to severe liver disorder. Then no evidence of change in exposure or pharmacodynamics. You need not to worry about hepatic impairment in class B of this hepatic impairment. You can give the same dose. Then the rivaroxaban, you have to apply 20 mg once daily with evening meal. And if creatinine clearance is 30 to 50 ml per minute, consider 15 mg once a day. Avoid use in patient with child book B and C hepatic impairment or with any degree of hepatic impairment associated with coagulopathy. And remember, dabigatran, rivaroxaban and apixaban are not recommended if creatinine clearance is less than 30 ml per minute. So now the third we are going apixaban, 5 mg twice a day given, but 2.5 mg twice daily if any two of the following are present. For example, age more than 80 years, body weight less than 60 kg, serum creatinine is more than 1.5 mg per deciliter. And in case of CYP3A4 and the P-glycoprotein inhibitors, dual inhibitors, consider 2.5 mg twice daily. And mild hepatic impairment, no dose adjustment needed. And moderate hepatic impairment, no dosing recommended. No dosing recommended available. Data are not available in moderate hepatic impairment what to give. And if there is severe hepatic impairment, avoid the use. In severe hepatic impairment, avoid the use. Then the adoxaban, 60 mg once daily. If creatinine clearance is 30 to 50 ml per minute, consider 30 mg once daily. And avoid using patient with child book B and C hepatic impairment. Now we are going to anticoagulant monitoring done by following parameters. Number 1, APTT, ECT, PT, thrombin time, diluted thrombin time, anti-factor XA. So, in dabigatran, the time for peak effect is 2 to 3 hours. In rivaroxaban, time for peak effect is 2 to 4 hours. In apixaban, time for peak effect is 3 to 4 hours. In edoxaban, the time for peak effect is 1 to 2 hours only. Now APTD, activated partial thromboplastin time, you must know that APTT is considered to more sensitive version of PTT and is used to monitor the patient's response to heparin. The reference range of APTT is 30 to 40 seconds. Now second will be your ECT. What is ECT? Icarian clotting time, a valid monitoring parameter for hirudin based anticoagulation in continuous renal replacement therapy. Remember, it is used when that in hirudin based anticoagulation in continuous renal replacement therapy. So APTT is a qualitative test and ECT is a quantitative test. So APT is qualitative. So if it is more than 2 of the upper limit of the normal, suggests excess bleeding risk. Again I repeat, if it is more than 2 of the upper limit of the normal, suggests excess bleeding risk. And ECT, that is Icarian clotting time, it is quantitative test. If it is equal to or more than 3 of the upper limit of the normal, suggests excess bleeding risk, then the PT is not useful here. And in rivaroxaban, it is qualitative. And apixaban not useful. Edoxaban not useful. The thrombin time, it is qualitative test, not useful in the rivaroxaban, apixaban, edoxaban. Then diluted TT, it is quantitative analysis, not useful in rivaroxaban, apixaban, and edoxaban. Then anti-factor 10A, not affected in dabigatran, and it is a quantitative cutoff value. It's not established in rivaroxaban, and this quantitative cutoff value not established also in apixaban and also in edoxaban. Now we are going to bleeding management of vitamin K antagonist and novel oral anticoagulants. Patient with active bleeding, what to do? Compress bleeding sites mechanically, assess hemodynamic status. Now what is hemodynamic status? I will tell you afterwards. And blood count, hemodynamic status comprise of what? Number 1, blood pressure. Second, basic coagulation parameter. Third, blood count. And fourth, kidney function. So now we will take basic coagulation parameter or complete blood count, factor 5SA, fibrinogen level, prothrombin time, PT or PT-INR, platelet count, thrombin time, and the bleeding time. And in this also you will come across radiological hemostasis, that is what? Transcatheter. By putting embolus, catheter enters in the veins or heart and it puts the embolus there and bleeding stops. Then what is anticoagulation status? You are supposed to remain, because you will come across here the anticoagulation status is the coagulation parameter, mainly CT, clot progression ratio, delta angle, and third is maximum clot stiffness. Maximum clot stiffness, that is MA, were derived from the clot viscoelasticity test and compared with standard thromboelastography. So this is your anticoagulation status. So we are coming now, now obtain anticoagulation therapy, when it was given last and in which doses it was given, whether it is non-oral anticoagulant or vitamin K antagonist. Then bleeding and need for surgery in coagulation anticoagulated patients. Number 1, if there is mild bleeding. Then second, moderate to severe bleeding. Third, life-threatening bleeding. Fourth, emergency surgeries, what to do and when to do. number 1, mild bleeding, delay for 1 dose. You must, if there is mild bleeding, delay for 1 dose or 1 day or omit the next dose until INR less than 2. Until INR less than 2. Second, evaluate concomitant medications like NSAID and alcohol. Then thirdly, check renal functions. Fourth, consider any possible underlying source of bleeding by gastroscopy. Then reassure the patient that ensure anticoagulation whether continued or no. Lastly, if it is vitamin K antagonist bleeding, then add vitamin K 5 to 10 mg intravenous. Resume anticoagulation as soon as hemostasis satisfactory and patient stabilized in all the 4 conditions. Now we will take moderate to severe bleeding. Bleeding source is controlled by mechanical pressure number 1. Second, endoscopic surgical hemostasis. Number 3rd, interventional radiological hemostasis. I have told you already. Then supportive measures like fluid replacement, transfusion of the blood, then maintain diuresis, and consider to add oral charcoal 100 gram if recently ingested novel oral anticoagulant or less than, but it should be less than 2 hours. Injection should be less than 2 hours. You remember, and it is for the novel oral anticoagulant especially. Then life-threatening bleeding, if occurs in novel anticoagulants, then specific antidote is what? 4-factor prothrombin complex concentrate 25 units per kg to 25 units per kg given in a single dose only. Or you can give activated plasma concentration complex, activated plasma complex concentrate 50 units per kg up to 200 units per kg given single dose only. And if 4-factor prothrombin complex concentrate is not available, if 4-factor prothrombin complex concentrate is not available, use fresh frozen plasma 10 to 20 ml per kg. And remember, very important, for dapagliflozin, what is the antidote? Idursulfimab. Idursulfimab is the antidote, 5 gram given, but the total dose is 5 gram, but it should be divided in 2.5 gram 5 minutes apart. Divided in 2.5 gram 15 minutes apart. Now, fourth, lastly, emergency surgery can be done. Proceed to surgery when necessary, and you wait if possible. Wait if possible, not necessary always. And check anticoagulation status if time available, and keep cross-matching ready. Cross-matching of the blood keep ready, and keep packed RBC ready, and keep 4-factor this prothrombin complex concentrate stand by. And also you can use in this condition the for dabigatran, the idursulfimab 5 gram 2.5 gram 15 minutes apart. Now we are going to the specific reversal agents, the reversal agents for bleeding and antidotes. First we will take the warfarin. If we want to reverse the bleeding effect of warfarin, then start 4-factor prothrombin complex concentrate. If INR is 2 to less than 4, use 25 units per kg, not to exceed 2,500 units. If INR 4 to 6, use 35 units per kg, not to exceed 3,500 units. If INR is more than 6, use 50 units per kg, not to exceed 5,000 units. Remember, single dose only, or if 4-factor plasma complex concentrate is not available, fresh frozen plasma 10 to 20 ml per kg used. Plus you have to combine what with it? Vitamin K 5 to 10 milligram IV in 20 to 60 minutes with either prothrombin complex concentrate or fresh frozen plasma. Never forget. Then we are going to novel and oral anticoagulant antidotes. First, dabigatran. Use idursulfimab. 5 gram total, given in as divided dosage of 2.5 gram 15 minutes apart. And alternative to idursulfimab is what? Number 1, hemodialysis. Number 2, activated charcoal 100 gram if ingestion time is less than 2 hours. And then 4-factor activated plasma complex concentrate 50 units per kg IV, not to exceed 5,000 units. Single dose only. Then tranexamic acid 25 mg per kg IV, then desmopressin 0.3 microgram per kg subcutaneous IV, limit to 2 IV doses given only. Fresh frozen plasma and factor 7A not recommended. Then apixaban, activated charcoal, you must use 100 gram either orally or by nasogastric tube if ingestion time less than 6 hours. There it was less than 2 hours, here it is less than 6 hours. Use 4-factor plasma complex concentrate 50 units per kg IV, not to exceed 5,000 units, single dose only. Then tranexamic acid 25 mg per kg IV, desmopressin 0.3 microgram per kg subcutaneous IV, limit to 2 IV doses only. Then Andexant alpha 400 milligram IV bolus at 30 milligram per minute, followed by continuous infusion at 4 microgram per minute for 120 minutes. Then lastly, rivaroxaban, activated charcoal 100 gram either orally or by nasogastric tube if ingested time is less than 8 hours. There it was 2 hours, it is here 6 hours, here it is less than 8 hours. 4-factor plasma complex concentrate 50 units per kg IV, not to exceed 5,000 units, single dose only. Then tranexamic acid 25 mg per kg IV, then desmopressin 0.3 microgram per kg subcutaneous IV, limit to 2 IV doses given. And Andexant alpha 800 mg IV bolus at 30 milligram per minute, followed by continuous infusion at 8 microgram per minute for 100 to 120 minutes. Now we are going recommendations for international normalization ratio. Recommendations for international normalization ratio for oral anticoagulant therapy. Treatment: if we are treating venous thrombosis, INR should be 2 to 3. If you are treating pulmonary embolism, INR should be 2 to 3. If you are treating venous thrombosis, high risk surgery, then use 2 to 3 INR. If you are preventing systemic embolism, INR should be 2 to 3. If tissue heart valve are there, then use INR 2 to 3. If acute myocardial infarction to prevent systemic embolus, then give INR should be 2 to 3. And if there is valvular heart disease, then give the INR should be 2 to 3. If atrial fibrillation is there, then INR should be 2 to 3. And bileaflet aortic valve. Bileaflet aortic valve in aortic position, INR should be 2 to 3. But there is exception for mechanical prosthetic valve. Mechanical prosthetic valve, INR should be 2.5 to 3.5. And there is exception for systemic recurrent emboli, INR should be 2.5 to 3.5. You must know what are the parenteral anticoagulants They are the actually indirect anticoagulants. For example, unfractionated heparin, low molecular weight heparin, fondaparinux, danaparoid, and direct thrombin inhibitors are hirudin, bivalirudin, and ergotroban. And continuous infusion of anticoagulants are what? When we give continuous is unfractionated hemoglobin, unfractionated heparin, ergotroban, and hirudin. So, when we want to switch between anticoagulant regime, how to switch? Suppose patient is on vitamin K antagonist anticoagulant, then stop vitamin K antagonist coagulant and wait for INR to drop less than 2. And once it dropped less than 2, start patient on novel oral anticoagulant. This is for vitamin K antagonist. Then for novel oral anticoagulant, from parenteral to, you want to switch from parenteral to novel oral anticoagulant. Then start novel oral anticoagulant 2 hours before the next parenteral drug dose without overlapping. And if you want to switch from continuous infusions to novel oral anticoagulant, start novel oral anticoagulant at time of discontinuation of continuous infusion. So immediately you can start. Patient must be eligible for dabigatran. Renal function should be assessed prior to initiation of treatment with dabigatran to exclude patient with severe renal impairment. Means creatinine clears less than 60 ml per minute is contraindication. So now we have finished the anticoagulants and now we are coming to antiplatelets. Antiplatelets agent single or dual, both are inferior to anticoagulant in stroke prevention. The bleeding complications with antiplatelets are similar to well-managed oral anticoagulant. The bleeding complications with antiplatelets are similar to well-managed oral anticoagulant. Therefore, the role of antiplatelet drug is limited to patients who have contraindication to oral anticoagulants. It is rather preferred that patient with long-term contraindication to oral anticoagulant is considered for left atrial appendage occluder device therapy rather than inappropriate use of antiplatelet drugs. Then vitamin K antagonists have proven to be the most antithrombotic treatment for stroke prevention in atrial fibrillation. However, the narrow therapeutic window of maintaining INR at 2 to 3 is difficult for most patients. The drug to drug and drug to food interactions make it difficult to maintain the INR in the target therapeutic range TTR. In India, the INR testing is not readily available everywhere and lack of standardization among the laboratories frequently results in INR being out of range. This is compounded by the tendency of physicians to maintain a lower INR at 1.5 to 2, which does not provide adequate protection against stroke, and combining them with antiplatelet only adds to the bleeding risk. The novel oral anticoagulant like the direct thrombin inhibitor like dabigatran or factor Xa inhibitor like rivaroxaban and apixaban are non-inferior to vitamin K antagonists in non-valvular atrial fibrillation. They are inferior in non-valvular atrial fibrillation. Importantly, there is a significantly lower intracranial bleeding with novel oral anticoagulant. Remember again, I repeat, there is significantly lower intracranial bleeding with novel oral anticoagulant. They have the advantage of no need for monitoring and very few drug-to-drug interactions and no drug-to-food interactions. These have a short half-life with a quick onset and offset of actions. There have been myths regarding novel oral anticoagulants. There are so many myths for this novel oral anticoagulant, which should not be there. High bleeding complication, no, there is no. More gastrointestinal bleeding, no, there is no. Tendency towards more myocardial infarctions, no, it is not. No antidote, antidotes are available. So, the recent data from long-term use of dabigatran and the mini Sentinel initiative did not find any higher bleeding or myocardial infarction rates with dabigatran as compared to warfarin. Judicious use of novel oral anticoagulant at a lower dose, especially in patients with renal dysfunction, elderly, when combined with antiplatelet are recommended. Regular monitoring of renal function and adjustment of dose as necessary should be done. Absence of antidote to novel oral anticoagulant is not a major limitation because the outcomes of bleeding with dabigatran is much better than those with warfarin. The short half-life of drug and use of recombinant factor 7A, prothrombin complex concentrates and charcoal filtrations and hemodialysis help in managing major bleeding. Itolizumab antidote to dabigatran is very effective, negating the anticoagulant effect quickly and is now available in India, though very expensive. The guideline recommended the use of novel oral anticoagulant at par with vitamin K antagonist, class 1 indication for stroke prevention in atrial fibrillation. Novel oral anticoagulant, class 1 indication for stroke prevention in atrial fibrillation. All three novel oral anticoagulants are now available in India. There is no head-to-head comparison. Between novel oral anticoagulant and choosing one over the other. Is clinician's discretion. In India, cost continues to be a major limitation in use of novel oral anticoagulants. Atrial fibrillation patient with acute coronary syndrome and recent stent implantation should receive triple therapy for a short period of 3 to 6 months, followed by 12 single antiplatelet clopidogrel and oral anticoagulant should be given for 1 year. After 1 year of acute coronary syndrome or stent implantation, monotherapy, oral anticoagulant alone is recommended for stroke prevention in atrial fibrillation and for reducing coronary events. Now, after thrombolytic and platelets, antiplatelet, we have come to, in management, we have come to rate versus rhythm control. Rate versus rhythm control in atrial fibrillation. In rheumatic valvular heart disease patients, the CAP study established importance of rhythm control strategy. This study had majority of the patients with metallic prosthetic valve. Remember, forget not. This study had majority of patients with metallic prosthetic valves, and the higher mortality in the rate control arm due to choked valves. Valves were choked, so mortality was high despite appropriate anticoagulation. It seems atrial fibrillation adds to the prothrombotic villi. It means what? It means there are prothrombotic villi in patients with metallic prosthetic valve. Then disopyramide and amiodarone are class 2A indication. Amiodarone, though effective in restoring sinus rhythm, has significant long-term side effects limiting its use. Rate control was utilized in 75% of patients in IHR's atrial fibrillation registry, possibly because of high prevalence of rheumatic valvular heart disease and atrial fibrillation. Rate control can be difficult in these patients, sometimes requiring hospitalization because of rapid ventricular rate. The latter is often precipitated by infections or congestive heart failure. Verapamilodiltiazem is class 1 indication. Verapamilodiltiazem is class 1 indication is the preferred rate control drug in patients with preserved ventricular function as it lowers both resting and exercise ventricular rate. Beta blockers require high dosage of carvedilol and metoprolol. They are also class 1 indication. The carvedilol and metoprolol, they are also class 1 indication, are also effective, especially when the sympathetic drive is high and in patients with mild to moderate ventricular dysfunction. Digoxin is often used in patients with rheumatic valvular heart diseases and atrial fibrillation. Digoxin is especially effective in elderly, those with congestive heart failure and right ventricular dysfunction. Then class 2 B drug indications are what? Sotalol, doptelet, donadaron must be considered alternative antiarrhythmic agents. Then the percutaneous balloon mitral commissurotomy should be complicated with electric cardioversion and amiodaron. In patients with atrial fibrillation and mitral stenosis, surgical valve replacement should be performed along with some form of left atrial reduction or maze-like procedure in patients with atrial fibrillation to restore sinus rhythm. Additionally, perioperative use of amiodaron and electric cardioversion in the postoperative period should be considered in these patients. Now we will go through flowchart management. Flowchart management of atrial fibrillation in patients with rheumatic valvular heart disease. Here you have to know certain points like left atrial appendages ligation by lariat device. The lariat device may be used to tie a knot around the opening of the left atrial appendage and close it off. By sealing off the left atrial appendages, the device prevents blood from flowing into the left atrial appendages where blood clots could form and enter in the brain. Left atrial size reduction. Left atrial size reduction. This technique consists of isolation of the pulmonary vein, and the excision of circumferential band of tissue of LA, including the base of the left appendages. Then the maze procedure, surgical procedure. The maze procedure is a surgical treatment for atrial fibrillation. It can also be called a surgical ablation, or it may be done during open heart surgery. The maze procedure may be done if a person is having another heart surgery such as coronary artery bypass grafting and valve repairment or replacement. Then you must know the isthmus cryoablation. Doctors perform cryoablation to restore normal heart rhythm by disabling heart cells that create an irregular heartbeat. During this minimally invasive procedure, a thin flexible tube called a balloon catheter is used to locate and freeze the heart tissue that triggers an irregular heartbeat. Then the pacing, VVIR, is ventricular demand pacing. The ventricle is paced, sensed, and the pulse generator inhibits pacing output. In response to a sensed ventricular event, the mode of pacing prevents ventricular bradycardia and is primarily indicated in patients with atrial fibrillation with a slow ventricular response. So, in management of atrial fibrillation, patient with rheumatic valvular heart disease and atrial fibrillation, you start anticoagulation. First see whether valve intervention is required or not. If valve intervention is not required, you go directly to amiodaron and later electrical cardioversion combined with irbesartan. And if you get the sinus rhythm, if you don't get, then rate control should be done, radio frequency ablation should be done, and atrioventricular nodal ablation should be done, or pacing can be done. And supposing wall intervention is required, then what to do? Then rate control till surgery planned, and for balloon mitral valvuloplasty is done. So rate control till surgery means balloon mitral valvuloplasty planned, and amiodarone given preoperatively to balloon mitral valvuloplasty, and electric cardioversion can be done with irbesartan, and valve surgery to be facilitated by left atrial appendages ligation or left atrial size reduction, or by Weis processor or isthmus cryoprocessor. If sinus rhythm returns, then low dose amiodarone can be given, and this low dose can be also omitted if sinus rhythm continues for more than 1 year. So, you have listened left atrial appendages ligation by lariat device. Here it is the lariat device. The lariat device may be used to tie a knot around the opening of the left atrial appendages and close it off. By sealing off the left atrial appendages, the device prevents blood from flowing into the left atrial appendage where blood clots could form. You see, here are the blood clots, and this is the catheter, and this is the ring which is put in the left atrial appendages, and the knot has been given. So this is closed, and so no blood will enter in the appendages, and no clotting formation, and no atrial fibrillation. Now the sinus rhythm control. Sinus rhythm control is no superior than rate control. Again, no significant improvement with rhythm control was primarily because of higher ischemic stroke that happened when the oral anticoagulant was withdrawn or the INR was in the subtherapeutic range. Therefore, again I repeat it, no significant improvement with rhythm control was primarily because of the higher ischemic stroke that happened when the oral anticoagulant was withdrawn or the INR was in the subtherapeutic range. Therefore, all atrial fibrillation patients, despite achieving SR, needs to be protected from ischemic stroke with continuation of oral anticoagulant. Rhythm control is preferred in young symptomatic patients. Rate control strategy is restricted to elderly patients who are not very symptomatic and in those with permanent atrial fibrillation or failed attempts at rhythm control. In patients with a strong trigger for atrial fibrillation like thyrotoxicosis, chronic obstructive lung disease, significant valve disease requiring surgery, enlarged atrium, in these situations rate control strategy is appropriate. A resting heart rate less than 110 beats per minute and exercise rate less than 130 beats per minute is the target in these patients. Rhythm control drugs, number 1 amiodarone was the only available antiarrhythmic till recent in India. Class 1C antiarrhythmic drug like flecainide and propafenone are now available along with the class 3 drug like sotalol. In young patients with low atrial fibrillation or mild hypertension, class 1C like flecainide and propafenone antiarrhythmic drugs should be the first line therapy. In low atrial fibrillation or mild hypertension, class 1C like flecainide and propafenone antiarrhythmic drugs should be the first line therapy for rhythm control. Active ischemia, left ventricular hypertrophy, left and ventricular dysfunction are relative contraindications to the use of class 1C drugs like plecanide and tropophenol. Then the beta blockers should always be used along with plecanide to control the ventricular rate if the atrial fibrillation organizes to atrial flutter. These drugs, when clinically tested in a given patient, can be used as pill-in-pocket therapy during atrial fibrillation relapse. Sotalol is preferred in patients with hypertension, CAD, left ventricular dysfunction. But remember, the QT interval needs to be monitored. Now the amiodarone should be reserved for patients with heart failure and as a second line antiarrhythmic drugs. It is important to consider electric cardioversion when antiarrhythmic drugs are used to achieve sinus rhythm. And if the drug by itself fails to restore sinus rhythm, then intravenous ibutylide is now available for acute termination of atrial flutter fibrillation. Ibutylide is the most often considered for paroxysmal recent onset atrial fibrillation in patients without significant left ventricular dysfunction and congestive heart failure. The patient needs to be treated and monitored in intensive care unit as it can cause significant QT prolongation and torsades de pointes. To avoid polymorphic VT, the baseline QT should be normal. Preloading with magnesium is often done. And the patient should be in the ICU till the QT returns to baseline. Now the radiofrequency ablation in atrial fibrillation. Ablation for atrial fibrillation has made tremendous strides controlling this arrhythmia. Long-term success for radiofrequency ablation for paroxysmal non-atrial fibrillation is 80 to 90%. Pulmonary vein isolation with radiofrequency ablation helps to eliminate the source of atrial fibrillation in these patients. However, almost 10 to 30% of patients have significant relapse of atrial fibrillation requiring repeat ablation. In patients with persistent atrial fibrillation, radiofrequency ablation is curative in only 50% of patients and they often require multiple procedures. Oral anticoagulation needs to be continued despite radiofrequency ablation for a variable period of 3 months to 1 year due to recurrence of atrial fibrillation, especially in patients with high Church-West score, especially in patients with a high Church-West score, which we have already discussed in part 1. In view of the potential complications during radiofrequency ablation for atrial fibrillation, including thromboembolism, cardiac perforation, the fatal left atrial esophageal fistula, radiofrequency ablation should be performed only if antiarrhythmic drug fail to control atrial fibrillation and in markedly symptomatic patients. Therefore, experienced operators should perform the radiofrequency ablation procedure for atrial fibrillation. The cost of specialized catheter and mapping system for atrial fibrillation ablation is also a major hindrance in widespread use of this procedure in India. At times, in patients with uncontrolled ventricular rate and tachycardia-induced cardiomyopathy, widespread use with uncontrolled ventricular tachycardia-induced cardiomyopathy. Radiofrequency ablation of atrioventricular node is performed to create complete AV block and implantation of permanent pacemaker to control and regularize the ventricular rate. Now the pacing in atrial fibrillation is restricted to patients with sinus node dysfunction. With sinus node dysfunction, where bradycardia is dominant and atrial fibrillation often initiates after a pause and atrial ectopy. Atrial-based pacemaker should be preferred choice. Atrial-based pacemaker should be the preferred choice. Pacing algorithm meant to prevent atrial fibrillation, like non-competitive atrial pacing or atrial preferential pacing, may benefit some patients to maintain sinus rhythm. Now, in the last but not the least, I come at the point of conclusion. Indian atrial fibrillation patients are younger and nearly 40% have rheumatic valvular heart diseases. Atrial fibrillation patients have a higher mortality and increased incidences of stroke and hospitalization for heart failure. Management of atrial fibrillation needs to be individualized. Antithrombotic using oral anticoagulant is the mainstay therapy to reduce the stroke. Rheumatic valvular heart disease patients and those with metallic prosthetic valves should receive vitamin K antagonists. Novel oral anticoagulants are safe and equally efficacious in non-valvular atrial fibrillation. Rhythm control strategy is advisable for the young symptomatic patients. Left atrial appendages occluder has a suitable role in patients with high stroke risk and relative contraindication to oral anticoagulants. Prakinite should be the first line of rhythm control strategy for long atrial fibrillation. Prakinite should be the first line of rhythm control strategy for long atrial fibrillation. Paroxysmal long atrial fibrillation in young patients can be effectively treated by radiofrequency ablation by isolating the pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein isolation is a procedure used to stop abnormal electrical signals in your heart that cause heart rhythm problems. Pulmonary vein isolation is a type of cardiac ablation. Cardiac ablation works by scarring or destroying tissues in your heart that triggers an abnormal heart rhythm. There is an immense need for India-specific data to address the growing burden of atrial fibrillation. First, number one, a population-based epidemiologic study is necessary to establish the incidence and prevalence of atrial fibrillation in India. This would also help to characterize the type of atrial fibrillation and devise treatment appropriately. Secondly, anticoagulation therapy needs to be well managed, especially with vitamin K antagonists. Patient and physician education should lead to proper utilization of oral anticoagulant therapy and achieve a 70% time in therapeutic range with INR. Thirdly, the cost of non-oral anticoagulant is prohibitively high for majority of the Indian patients. Hopefully, in the coming years, this issue will be resolved and improve the use of novel oral anticoagulants. Fourthly, a pan-India registry. India's leading provider of legal solution is of radiofrequency ablation for atrial fibrillation would help to evolve a widespread application of this therapy. Finally, rheumatic valvular heart disease and atrial fibrillation need to be revisited in terms of antiarrhythmic drugs, number one. Number two, surgical MAGE procedure. Number third, radiofrequency ablation. Also the role of novel oral anticoagulant in mild to moderate rheumatic valvular heart diseases and no metallic prosthesis should be evaluated. There should not be metallic prosthesis. The left atrial appendages occluder has a role and hopefully the subset of Indian patients to benefit will be identified. The LA appendage occluder, also called left atrial appendages closure, which is a treatment strategy to reduce the risk of left atrial appendage blood clot from entering the bloodstream and causing a stroke in patients with non-valvular atrial fibrillation. So, in today's CME, we have discussed part 2 of atrial fibrillation in Indian patients and its complications and management. I am sure that you have enjoyed second part, and I thank you for your kind attention. I thank you for your kind attention, and soon I am going with a beautiful chapter of cardiology in next CME. Thank you very much.